Welcome to class. This is Mr. Pigeon. I am going to go over some information for you today regarding our lesson for English 1 through 4. Let's get it. So let's start off with a little bit of introduction. I want to take it back a little bit to a little bit about me personally. I know that many of you, you know me, and you know that I grew up in Chicago, and my neighborhood was Uptown. So I wanted to share a little bit and kind of preview what we're going to do regarding, just to give you a little background information. Um, let's see. I want to switch some settings around real quick and just make sure that I'm sharing all the proper information. Here we go.
Major issues facing Uptown. We alluded to them, but from your perspective.
Well, there was a lot of alcoholism in Uptown. There were bars everywhere you looked. A lot of alcoholics on the streets. There was a lot of mental illness in Uptown. In 1972, the state of Illinois deinstitutionalized many of its mental patients, and about 40% of all those who came to Chicago comprised about 1% of the city's landmass. There was a lot of arson. There were gangs. There was graffiti everywhere. There was a lot of litter, crumbling infrastructure.
You took a big picture look, but you also focused in on individuals, and we have some particular pictures that we'd like your commentary on. There's one that you call Best Friends. What is the story behind this picture, Best Friends?
The kid on the right had come from Kentucky. I encountered these two kids on a street, and I talked to them for a few minutes, as I did with most of these people, and I said, "Can I take a picture?" They threw their arms around each other and announced they were best friends. The kid on the right, I later found, discovered that his brother was one of John Wayne Gacy's first victims. His brother was a little bit older. He was nabbed coming home from Sun High School one day.
So sharing that information about Uptown, this is the area in Chicago where I grew up. And the thing that I wanted to talk about is the setting in the story takes place in a rough area, in a rough neighborhood. And for me, one thing that I really found relatable to my own life was the fact that the story took place in a setting very similar to how I grew up. And even the language within the story was very real. And for some people, my intention wasn't to show use information that uses racial slurs, but the literature does. And I'm sharing with this sharing my screen. This area is not very far from where I grew up, and it looked very similar at the time. There were definitely a lot of homeless people. That was a big issue at the time, and homelessness wasn't the only issue, but it was a major issue. But what I wanted to focus on was this right here. There's this picture that they had on this website. This man that I had just showed you that was being interviewed, he was he had taken pictures in Uptown where I grew up, and he was publishing a book with the pictures and basically like a historical book. Uptown was really famous and well known for um, Al Capone and his involvement in the area. Anyway, Walkie Talkie Man on the screen is what I have up. Walkie Talkie Man, this gentleman right here, if you noticed, he's definitely has his walkie talkies and he's communicating with people. What the story that we're going to be reading this week is called Telephone Man. Telephone Man is actually an excerpt from a book. Um, it's an excerpt from a book, and um, Telephone Man actually is an excerpt from Crazy Horse Electric Game, which you should be able to see on the screen right now, and I'm highlighting. Telephone Man right here, it says, from Crazy Horse Electric Game is a racist. He's a racist because he has no tools to elevate his status in the world without putting others down, at least in his mind. Um, what you'll find about the character is that he is what is considered disabled or has a mental disability, perhaps. And for me, why I take this personal as well is, and if you know me and you've had me in class, I probably have talked about my brother. My brother has a disability as well. And growing up in Chicago with my brother as well, we faced a lot of different situations together, very adverse situations where um, they didn't always favor us in a positive way. But the area that I grew up in, there was a lot of people with mental disabilities because actually there were different facilities in the area that most of the population that um, had services or free public services for housing were located in my neighborhood. So a lot of people that were coming out of jail or had other situations, maybe they were um, ward of the state, meaning that the state had control over them, kind of like a parental ward. But for somebody with like a mental disability without family there, the state would be uh, involved making decisions for this person. Now, for me, Telephone Man and the area that it takes place in the setting is very similar for me how I grew up, and also how the area that I grew up in. And I definitely encountered a lot of unique individuals, and make no mistake about it, Telephone Man is a unique individual. So I just wanted to preface this before you read it. Okay. So, with that said, I hope you enjoy it. And I will, I look forward to your responses to the work, and I can't wait to see what you come up with for your answers. Thank you, and I will see you guys later.